All right, we're back with episode 10. I cannot believe it's already been 10 weeks of this at this point. We're already into the XFL championship week, week 3 of the USFL. It seems like these seasons are flying by. Evan, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, man. I know this was on short notice getting this all put together, but I'm happy to be here.
Definitely. Thank you so much for joining us. And it was very short notice for anybody who's watching. It was 5 minutes ago that I talked to Evan about it. So pretty awesome for him to hop on and talk about it. But he was breaking a bunch of news through XFL analysts. So I figured it would be good to have him on here to talk about the Houston Roughnecks and all the players that they have that are getting NFL interest. Krish, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing great. Happy to be here. Happy to have you guys with me talking XFL and USFL once again. So we'll go ahead and get right into the XFL games to start off. This past weekend, we had the XFL playoffs. As you all know, we had the Houston Roughnecks hosting the Arlington Renegades. We'll go and talk about that game first. This one quickly turned into a game a lot of people did not expect. In fact, Arlington, I think, scored more points in the second quarter on offense than they had all season long. And it ultimately ended up in a Arlington Renegades victory. Evan, you being our resident Houston Roughnecks fan, did you expect this at all, given the way that these two teams have played during the season?
I didn't expect it, but I've said many times, you can't count out Arlington, especially with the adjustments that they've made in the second half of the season. I mean, trading for Luis Perez was a big deal. Obviously, that bolstered their offense, and in those last couple games of the regular season, they really started playing a bit differently. And in particular, I think the DC game, which is now going to be a rematch in the championship, that game stood out to me as one, where the Renegades played extremely well, and that was something that we hadn't seen at previous points in the season from them. I don't even know if that kind of thing was possible, just given the way that their operation was going there for a couple weeks. But the bottom line is, yeah, man, I mean, that was definitely unexpected to anybody who follows the XFL, and I was there in person to see it, watching up in the press box, and yeah, man, it was quite the. I think the term I used on Reed's show this morning was shell shocked. I was sitting there looking, and I'm thinking, man, this is just. Definitely uncharacteristic would be a way to put it. If I could use one word to describe it, that would definitely be uncharacteristic. And, I think it just came down to, Arlington coming out really hot, again, probably hotter than anybody expected. And then Houston being able to what's the word I'm looking for? Not make the correct adjustments, I guess is what I'm trying to say. There was some very, again, uncharacteristic things, DBs giving receivers a lot of space, the defensive front couldn't get the same pressure. Arlington's offensive line was playing extremely well and giving Luis Perez a lot of time in the pocket, to make good decisions and to make a bunch of those throws that, he had downfield. So, yeah, it was unfortunate that Houston lost. And, now we're going to have a 4-16, in the championship game in San Antonio, which is, we can argue about that till the end of time, whether or not the Renegades should be there over St. Louis. That's been a big debate, amongst people in XFL circles. But I think Arlington earned it, and congratulations to them. They played one hell of a game.
100%. I would say that this is proof that any given Sunday, any team can win. None of us really saw this camp coming. In fact, I will give credit to Mark Hogan, who was on this episode on this show last week. And he was the only one who predicted an Arlington victory, shockingly enough. So hopefully he made a little bit of money on that bet this weekend, because I know he's heavy into all that. Krish, were you shocked by this victory?
Man, I was trying to figure out what's worse, my Boston Bruins blowing a 3-1 lead or Houston just throwing away their season. No, I mean, I thought I was really shocked. At the end of the day, the Renegades aren't a great team. They aren't. Like, that's the reality. They played an insane game. I mean, they played their best game all season. But, I mean, Houston's inability to develop an offense late in the season defined their entire season. Like with Silvers, like I thought Silvers was all right, but I was hoping to see more McDonald. And McDonald showed flashes, but just like taking one out, putting Silvers in and just riding with Silvers, and then the whole drama with him on the injury report earlier, I knew this was going to come back to haunt him, and so it eventually did. The minute they lost Jonte Kirkland, like that was bad for them, and I don't think they ever found a guy to really adequately replace him. So the whole Nick Hawley situation, I mean, they had just so much stuff going on that eventually was going to catch up to them. But, I think it was a great first season. Obviously, it's XFL's first season. I don't know if Wade Phillips will be back next year. I hope he is. But I give a lot of credit. I think in the beginning of the season, AJ Smith looked so good. Like, I was like, oh, my God. Like, he looks like a legit coordinator that can go to the next level. And then he just declined, really fast. So I hope next season they bring back a lot of the same pieces. I don't know the whole situation with Jonte, if he's going to get a chance at the next level. I don't know if he will just because he's coming off of an injury. So that might, tell teams to kind of steer away a little bit. But I'm kind of interested to see what Houston does at quarterback next year. So.
It'll be interesting. Evan, you got any takes on any of what he just brought up?
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot to unpack. I definitely agree about the part, with Jonte Kirkland, losing him was obviously big, and I was the one who, was unfortunately had to report that news. That you're completely right with the assumption that, they never really found another guy who was able to step up after that and give them that deep ball ability where there was a comfortable option to throw downfield. And that really hurt, right? Because that's something that offense needed to fully function. And, unfortunately, they didn't really find it again, even after 6 weeks or whatever it was. But yeah, in terms of, I think you said, Wade Phillips coming back next year, I was there in the press conference and he he didn't really give a clear answer. He just kind of said, well, I'm getting older. He's 75 now, I think. And, he's already done a lot. So we'll see. He clearly enjoyed it. He did allude to that part when he was talking about sort of his tenure during the season. And then, AJ Smith, I love AJ. He's a personal friend of mine. And I've talked to him, now we've been talking for probably coming up close to 2 years. But, there definitely was, I think, if you ask me, we probably should have run the ball a bit more at the end of the season, especially with that running back room. You had Max Borghi, Bryson Aline, and then even Jeremy Cox coming in late and having that nice game against Arlington in week 10. You had a lot of options in the run game, and I'm not sure that we exercised all of those to our best ability. And I understand it's a pass-first offense, but it got to a point where me personally, I said, yeah, maybe lean a bit more on the run because it did work. And especially having, Cole McDonald in at quarterback on certain run packages, that was definitely cool to see and something that helped the offense down the stretch.
I would 100% agree. I personally would have liked to see Cole McDonald from, game one, but Brandon Silvers played very well. In fact, he shocked me. I didn't expect him to be at the tops of the rankings all season long, but he was one of the better passers in the league. And, he definitely caught me off guard with that fact. I was not too big of a fan of him coming out of the first XFL or anything he's done quite since then. So I definitely agree with Chris. It'll be interesting to see how this quarterback position shakes out and see if either one of these guys gets offers at the next level, although I think their age might play a factor in all of that. Moving on to the DC game against Seattle. This game ended up a little bit of a blowout. I think this is exactly the outcome that most everybody expected, except maybe Reed Johnson. But you never know. There's a lot of Seattle fans out there. But anyway, more or less, DC ended up winning the game 37-21. Looked pretty dominant all game long, although it did take 28 points in the second half to win the game. Ben DiNucci shockingly did not throw an interception, so good for him. He proved me wrong. And then Jordan Teamu, he looked rough at times, but at the same time, he still did enough to get the job done. Chris, what is your take on this game? Were you surprised by this win, or was it pretty much exactly what you expected?
I mean, I thought Seattle was gonna compete a little bit more. I was hoping Seattle. I was about to put $30 on Seattle covering the spread, which I'm happy I didn't because I've had a rough weekend. But I just think Seattle, they never Seattle like the worst version of Houston. They were never able to really solidify their running game or their offense as a whole. They had so much talent with Josh, Jakor, Philip Lindsay. I just think they never were able to find a rhythm. And I hope Haslett is back next year. I love Jim Haslett. I'm a huge fan. I love June Jones, what he did with Cole Brennan down there at Hawaii, So I hope that they figure it out, whether bringing Danucci back for a second year, which honestly, I think Danucci's headed to the Los Angeles Chargers, in my opinion, to be the third string quarterback to back up Max Duggan. In my opinion, I just think he fits, like you said. You mentioned this a couple times too, like Kellen Moore being there. He really, really fits the system. So
Shall see.
But DC all year. I mean, they've been dominant. I can't wait to look at my phone after the championship game and see how many guys they have getting NFL invites, because that is going to be a load. I can guarantee you they'll have like 8 or 9 guys from that team that are going to get minicamp looks. So, no, I'm happy for DC. They have a cupcake matchup for the championship game, but we'll probably get into that.
Definitely can get into that right now. Evan, what are your thoughts on this game? Were you surprised by DC's victory or how decisive it was?
Yes and no. I thought the flow of the game was interesting, and I really thought that Seattle's, I guess you could say, early struggles with them, having a couple drops by the receivers, that was, maybe uncharacteristic. Perhaps the weather played a role in that. But yeah, I mean, I said it on Reed's show this morning, shout out to both of the DC coordinators, offensive coordinator Fred Keiss and defensive coordinator Greg Williams in particular. I mean, he was really able to, shut down June Jones. And I think the term he used was, unleash hell or something like that. He's always done that, been extremely aggressive, throughout his career. And it showed yesterday. Pretty slow first half, both those mistakes by both teams, you could say. But DC really pulled away there in the second half. I mean, that was about as dominant as you could get when it comes to closing out a game. And I think in terms of the championship, right now there's no real other clear choice than DC. I mean, Arlington is on an upward trend, because they beat Houston, and I was there, I saw that, right? But man, DC is just so dominant, and they've been that way all year. They had their only loss was to Orlando of all teams, and that was only by 1 point. So when you look at that, they were 1 point away from being undefeated, and hats off to them. That was a phenomenal game, and again, way for them to just close it out. And a lot of teams, some teams had trouble, particularly Vegas this year, doing that. They get leads on teams, and then records would kind of come back and take over in the second half of games. I saw that in Houston as well this year, when they came to play Houston. But I mean, overall, again, bottom line here is great performance for DC. And right now, I mean, I don't see anybody else that's going to be crowned the XFL champion in 2 weeks. So
I would strongly agree. How can you argue with how DC's built? I mean, I've talked about it all season long. I love the way they put together their quarterback room. I really love how it seems like there's a true marriage between the players they picked and the schemes they run. Like the head coach, Reggie Barlow, and Von Hutchins, the DPP, seem to work hand in hand very well when they selected players and brought them in. And I think that really showed on paper at the end of the season when you look at across the league at what categories they lead and how dominant they were in certain games. But moving on to the USFL, we will talk about the New Orleans Breakers game, which was supposed to be the game of the weekend. New Orleans Breakers defeated the Birmingham Stallions 45-31, which I thought was quite surprising by the end of the game. I did actually predict New Orleans would win. I did not expect it to be that big of a margin. Krish, I know you've been kind of, we'll say, harsh on MBT. What did you think about his performance in this game and ultimately the victory by the Breakers?
So, hats off to my colleague Michael Washington and his Breakers. They, MBT, I was hating, I was hating on him. I didn't think he was going to be that good. First game looked rough. He had just become a different quarterback. And I don't know if it's him or John DeFilippo or what. I mean, that is just insane. The throws he was making, the air he was putting on balls, like he looked really, really good. He looked like the MBT that was the 6th-year NFL vet. That's what he looked like, you know? And so, I mean, I just think Birmingham came out slow because Magoo was hurt. If Magoo was healthy, Birmingham would have won. But Magoo would just look rough from the beginning. They put Jalen Morton in for a couple drives. Like that's a nightmare in itself. Right now. Not saying that he can't get better, but he's just still young. And I'm surprised, like, Slow didn't get an opportunity, you know, when Magoo hurt like that. But Magoo's tough, you know, he's gonna fight it off. But I will say the one throw that Magoo made, like, horrific. You know, that interception, that's completely unacceptable. He needs to clean that up. Defender right in his face and just do it right to him. Like, but he'll correct that. You know, Magoo and MBT are both top 2 quarterbacks in this league, and no one even comes close. Like, you can't even put Case Cookett in the conversation with both of them. You know, they're on a different level. So that's my opinion on that.
All right. I'm going to leave that one alone. I know how much you like to poke the bear when it comes to talking crap on the Stars. So I'll just leave that one right there. Evan, what are your thoughts on this game? Were you surprised to see the Breakers defeat the Stallions like they did?
Yeah, I mean, it was certainly a dominant performance, and right now those are two of the sort of, I guess, that was sort of a marquee matchup, right? Those are two of the top teams in the USFL, and I've been very impressed with both of the rosters and both of the coaching staffs in New Orleans and Birmingham. For me, I've always been kind of an MBT truther, I guess. You know, I like what he did up in Canada, and I understand, you know, he's getting older, and, you know, maybe – you know, I can understand why people may be expected to drop off. He's playing a bit of a different game back down here in the States. You know, he spent quite a bit of time up in Canada, in Toronto. But yeah, I mean, that performance was just, again, you know, it shows that he's still got it. And even at, I believe he's 34 years old, you know, that experience is really paying off here. And if this, you know, ends up being his last shot playing pro football, given his, you know, personal situation, wanting to spend more time with his wife and, I don't know how many kids he has, you know, maybe 1, maybe 2, I'm not sure. But anyway, spending more time with his family, you know, this seems like he's going to go out in a pretty nice way here. I mean, you know, New Orleans looks great. And their running back, Wes Hills, too, who also spent time up in Canada. I was extremely impressed with him yesterday and have been for the entire season. You know, Birmingham, it's one of those teams where, you know, they've got a couple kinks to figure out. I've liked what Birmingham's done this season as well. I definitely don't think they're a bad team. You know, Davion Davis used to be on the Roughnecks. You know, he's over there now doing his thing. And, you know, Magoo, obviously, it's nice to see him kind of getting things back together, you know, after his injury last year. And I know he's not perfect yet. He's still got some things to iron out, but he's heading in the right direction, that's for sure. He's got big holes. A big hole to fill, in place of Jamar Smith, who carried them to a championship last year. But yeah, you know, other than that, I think that game I would have picked New Orleans to win. And they did. They just did it in a bit more dominant fashion than I expected. But yeah, overall, it was two good teams going at it, and I was impressed.
Same here. I think I picked it to be like a 3-point game. But yeah, ultimately, I thought MBT came out and looked the best he has all season. I think he's had really good second halves. But as Mike Mitchell said, it's kind of typical MBT. He kind of comes out hot and cold sometimes. But now he seems like he's on the ball. He's ready to go. And I think he's going to roll through next couple opponents. But moving on to the next game, we got the Memphis Showboats versus the Houston Gamblers. The big storyline coming out of this game, and I wanted to get both of you guys' opinions on this one, is the fact that Todd Haley had 2 weeks in a row has looked very upset with the opposing head coach in the post-game handshake, which is supposed to be like a show of gamesmanship. You know, you're supposed to show that you're a professional even when you lose. So 2 weeks in a row, he's refused to, you know, shake the opposing head coach's hand. What are you guys' thoughts on this? Let's go to Evan first. I mean, I know you're trying to get into the coaching world, so I feel like you have a particular opinion on this one.
I mean, yeah, look, I don't know exactly what's going on with Todd Haley. You know, I can understand being upset when you're 0-3. That's not a position you want to be in as a coach. And, you know, again, there could be some internal things that we don't know about that are going on that adds pressure to the situation. But it is strange. That is the bottom line. You know, I've picked up on that. You know, last week it happened as well. And it is extremely odd, and I don't, I did a bit with the Bandits last year, and Haley was there with Teamu, and I don't recall him, acting in this manner. So I don't know. I don't really have an answer as to why it's happening, but I hope it gets figured out soon because it's not a good look. I mean, I know the team's 0-3. You've got some things to figure out. There's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of uncertainties. But again, like you said, Sam, it's all about professionalism and, composure. So I might have cut out there for a minute, but it's all about maintaining composure is the bottom line with, with coaching, especially, you're supposed to be a leader of a team, leader of a franchise, leader of men, really. And, to go and do things like that at the end of the game, again, I can understand frustration, but for it to happen 2 weeks in a row is very odd and I guess almost inexcusable.
I would agree. I mean, last week was a blowout, so I could see being upset after that game, but at the same time, it's not like you can blame the refs. This week, I think he had some questions about some last-second play that he was not happy about. I don't have all the details right here, so that's my fault, but I believe it had something to do with him being upset about a call that did not go his way. Chris, what are your thoughts on this? I know you're a Showboats fan. I know you've had some strong words about Haley, despite the fact that you're a Showboats fan. So what is your opinion on this?
Yeah, to be honest, I'll give you an example. Let's look at the Rapid City Marshals. They lose by 60 every game, and they play with borderline semi-pro players. But Dante Dudley doesn't act like that after he loses. So Todd had no excuse to act like that. I think it's so unprofessional. Like Evan said, he's embarrassing himself. He's honestly embarrassing the league. That's what he's doing. Because this is a guy who was the offensive coordinator of the Pittsburgh Steelers for years and who was very well respected. And as the years went on, he slowly started to lose respect from players, from other coaches. He went down. He went downhill really fast. And so I think that he needs to look in the mirror and figure out. I saw this on Twitter. I forgot who it was. They said, he needs to sit back and look in the mirror and figure out what he's doing with this team. His team doesn't look good. They looked a lot better than they did last week, obviously. But if you're scoring 2 points on offense, and not even on offense, honestly, you scored 0, that's crazy. If you sit back and think about how insane that is, I've never seen that. And so you're a leader in men, you're playing with a professional football team. Let's get this straight, right? You're the same guy that cut Justin Stockton without giving him a chance. You're that same guy. So, let's remember that. Let's set that straight. So I obviously hope the best for the team. I hope the best for all the players. I hope Jordan McRae gets out of there and goes to a good team, and instead of them abusing his talent. And yeah, so I'm no longer a Showboats fan, by the way. I stepped down. I'm a free agent now, so I'm not on any team. I'm no longer a fan.
Man, 2 teams and it's only week 3, man. I don't know about this fandom you got going on, but we'll leave that for another day. Maybe I need to become a free agent because the next game we're going to talk about is the Philadelphia Stars getting smacked in the mouth by the Pittsburgh Maulers because it was embarrassing. Despite the fact that Case Cook has completed over 63% of his passes, he threw 2 interceptions, still only managed about 7 yards per completion. The run game was non-existent. We literally averaged 1 yard per carry. There was drops across the board. I mean, Dondria Overton dropped a pass. We had 12 targets to Coleman, who only had 8 catches. Rowland, 6 targets, 3 catches. Devin Gray, same thing, 5 targets, 2 catches. Just across the board, the offense looked out of sync. The one player that you can actually give some flowers to this week is Adam Rodriguez, who had 8 tackles, 4 solo tackles, 2 sacks, 2 tackles for a loss, and a pass deflection. He also forced a fumble that was very key. And really, he, again, was the only player that was worth watching in this game. I mean, Rowland had a decent day on kick returns, but again, nothing special. And then Aguilar got back off the snide. He had a solid game, 2 for 2 on field goals and 1 for 1 on extra points. Krish, let's go to you first. I'm sure you have something to say about this game. What did you think about the Stars losing to the Maulers?
Well, first, I'll start off with a positive. Adam Rodriguez, like you said, that's Mason Crosby twin right there. He's really electric to watch. So shout out to him. I hope he keeps doing his thing. So with the offense, right? I mean, you guys can't move the ball. You have inability. You guys are lucky if you score. I like Case. I think he's a great guy. But you know who I like even more? I love Ladley, and I cannot wait to hopefully see him this week. I think it's time to try something new. And you're looking at me like I'm crazy. If you look at the stats, Cookins has 4 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. So it may be time. Maybe it's time to realize this is not the same quarterback. That's fine. I mean, when people get hurt, they come back slow. And he got really injured. I understand he was with the LA Rams practice squad, but they were kind of guarding him because they knew he was hurt. He's not at his 100%. And so you can tell though. I mean, are you watching the game? Like I watched the game. I've never 4 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. And you're trying to tell me that not even give another guy a chance who's mobile and who's a proven stud in the USFL? That's crazy. But I will say this. Troy Williams, he looked really good this week. He looked a lot better than he has. He's starting to come in his own. And I think at the end of the day, with the Philadelphia Stars, Reuben Foster, he owns you, man. He's your father. So accept that, move on to the next week, enjoy being 1 and 2, and we'll see what happens.
All right. Evan, you got anything to say about this game?
Yeah, I won't talk too much about this game. I mean, Chris obviously had his thoughts, and I didn't really get around to watching much of it. I mean, I saw the final score, and, I saw a couple of the stat lines. Reuben Foster was really good. One of the players I was extremely excited to see in the league this year. He's starting to come along, helping a Pittsburgh Maulers team out that has historically not had much success. But, yeah, I mean, I think everyone is talking more about the Stars' perspective from this one just because, they – got off to a hot start week 1, to beating Memphis. And ever since then, things have kind of slowed down. And again, I went on Reed's show this morning and we talked a bit about how maybe they're kind of getting found out to an extent. And, I'm not sure. I mean, I can't say Case Cookis is outright bad. In these spring football leagues, there's a lot of, 2 quarterback systems. So like Chris said, maybe you do try and bring in someone else for a bit. But, I mean, we can't forget, what Case Cookis did last season and what his potential is. I mean, he took the Stars all the way to the championship game. And, that's just talking about quarterback play. I talk a lot about quarterbacks. But yeah, I mean, interesting game to say the least. And, Philadelphia definitely has some things to figure out. That's the bottom line. But good for Pittsburgh. We want to take a positive from this. They look to be, finally getting something together. I mean, after that, horrible season last year, maybe this year they get, some things kind of ironed out, figured out, hopefully a bit of a refreshing feel. Again, they haven't had the best start either. I'm not saying, they're in competition for anything, but bottom line there is more of the focus on that game lies on Philly than it does on Pittsburgh.
I would agree. Krish, some of what you said makes sense. Some of what you said doesn't make sense, and I'll tell you why. Basically, what you said that makes sense is Vadley should play this week, but it's not because of an injury that happened last season that is completely healed at this point. It's because of him getting hit last week and injuring his shoulder, which is clearly bothering him, not his leg, but that's okay. Vadley, I don't know if he would necessarily be the first choice. I could see him being the first choice just based on his knowledge of the USFL. But if you've noticed, they have rotated the backup quarterbacks each week so far. And I think that's because they don't really know who they like more between Kevin Thompson and Vadley. And they also want to kind of, throw them a bone each week as far as that little bit of extra money they make being active each week. But yeah, other than that, most of what you said is true. They can't run the ball right now, which is making them one-dimensional, which is in turn hampering their pass game. So they just can't move the ball right now. And until they get that offensive line fixed, I don't think it's really going to change much. We got one more game to talk about, and that is the Generals versus the Panthers, which actually became a better game than I expected, and I did not expect the Generals to come out with the victory in this one based on how they've looked prior to this. DeAndre Johnson looked pretty well in this game. Chris, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, DeAndre looked good. I didn't really get a chance to get to watch it, but I saw a little bit of it. I have to say, they do have a good fan base. They had a lot more fans show up to that game than I expected. They obviously, like, in the XFL, right, you look at the top team with attendance. Houston was at the top with attendance for a little bit. And, like, Seattle and the other teams were kind of at the bottom. And DC and St. Louis are, like, the top teams. But in the USFL, it's kind of hard to see because, like, no one goes to games. So when you have one team that actually gets, like, real, like, people in the stands, it's actually amazing to see. So I was really happy for them. I'm happy that the Generals won. My boy Toby Johnson, great game. Excited to watch him and watch 3 former Massachusetts Pirates players. I don't know any other Arena League team that has 3 former players in one USFL game, but that's another story. I thought, Josh Love struggled, and I was really happy to see Carson Strong get his first professional league touchdown. I hope there's more to come for him, and I honestly could see him starting next week. They might want to give a change in that position. So, yeah.
It'll be interesting to see what they do there. Evan, what do you think they'll do at the quarterback position?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a really big Carson Strong fan. And, Josh Love has, he's been up and down this season too, right? I'm glad he came back to the USFL because I think, he's one of these guys that could find a long life in a spring league, if he gets some things ironed out. And, he's got a lot to perfect about his game, but there's also a lot of tools to work with. And last year, I wouldn't say he was set up for success, splitting his time between the Maulers and the Panthers, who were both, two, I guess, lower end teams last year is a way you could put it. But I love Carson Strong. And another guy I thought was looking good for the Panthers yesterday too was Trey Quinn, who, was at one point, I think, a Mr. Irrelevant in the NFL in 2018 or 2019. I think he was the leading receiver for Michigan, if I'm not mistaken. So liked him, again, like Chris said, good to see Carson Strong get in there and do, put some work in. I've been waiting a long time to see that as well. And then from the general side, I think it was Alonzo Moore had a hell of a touchdown, and so did Darius Victor. And then, DeAndre Johnson. I mean, I spoke his praises on Reed's show this morning. I thought he would look fantastic. And I know, again, he's kind of one of these guys that's been caught in those 2 quarterback systems. Last year, he was splitting reps with Luis Perez, who carried a lot of the weight. And then this year, they've brought in Dakota Prukop at times, the former CFL guy. But, man, DeAndre clearly can start in this league, and he's clearly come a long way. He's one of these guys that has showed development, I think, over the course of his tenure with the Generals, and I'm excited to see what the rest of the season holds for him.
I would agree. Personally. I hope at this point they just roll with DeAndre Johnson, but we'll see how they determine their best course of action moving forward. It might have just been a matchup issue that they saw, and that they went with DeAndre Johnson the whole game. I'm not really sure. As far as Trey Quinn, he had 6 targets, 5 receptions, 61 yards, and a touchdown. And then one subject we did not touch on that I just wanted to throw out there real quick. If you did not see the highlights from the Pittsburgh Maulers Philadelphia Stars game, at least I believe it was that game, there was an insane reception by one of those players, and it is something that you have to see to believe. So make sure you go check out the USFL highlights from this past weekend, because it is unreal. It was unbelievable. So let's go ahead and talk about some of the NFL workouts that are already kind of starting to trickle out. And this is kind of where we give Evan the floor for a minute, because there are a ton of Houston players getting interest, and Evan covers the Houston Roughnecks for XFL News Hub, in case you were not aware. Definitely check out all of his articles, and also check out XFL Analyst, who he gave a lot of this information to. So why don't you go ahead and run us through the list of players that you've got, and I'll refresh your memory in case you miss anybody.
Yeah, no. So I got some information today, a bit more than I was expecting, regarding, some early transactions, or, maybe not transactions. There was a couple workouts, but just guys that are gaining general interest. One of our defensive linemen, CJ Brewer, who played at Coastal Carolina. I think he might have been a 3-time All-American there. I'd have to double check on the numbers, but an extremely good player who played a long time there at CCU, and then most recently played for the Bills in 2022. He was active for, I think, a game this season early on before he came to Houston. So he's got some pretty fresh experience. He's booked a workout with the Bucks, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And then you've got one of our offensive linemen, Jack Snyder, who primarily played at one of the guard spots. Forget if it's left or right. Again, I'm going off the top of my head here. And I'd have to look back at the depth charts if I really wanted to get Jack Snyder, offensive lineman. He played at San Jose State, signed an undrafted free agent deal with the Rams either last year or the year before. Again, got to jog my memory on that, but he has a workout scheduled with the Miami Dolphins. I will say, too, there'll be a couple more linemen, Alex Millette being one of the ones that I mentioned, but there might be even a couple more than that that get NFL looks, because the offensive linemen were highly valued, I believe, amongst the NFL scouts. And, going down the list, I mean, this is an obvious one. Trent Harris, XFL 2023 sack leader, phenomenal, had 4 sacks in the season opener against the Orlando Guardians. He has interest from over 8 NFL teams. I haven't gotten clarity on which teams yet, but that will, hopefully come out, or I might be able to get some more information on that in the coming days. If he doesn't sign on the 15th, I'm going to be extremely surprised. And for those who don't know, May 15th is the deadline for when, not deadline, but date when XFL players can start signing NFL contracts. Right now, they can do workouts and mini camps, but they're not permitted to sign contracts just yet until the season is over after the championship. Anyway, after that, I already said Alex Millette, and then we've got a couple other players, 2 of the defensive linemen, again, Glenn Logan from LSU, and then Jack Heflin from Iowa. They're getting a significant NFL interest. Jack Heflin was with the Packers before, and then Logan had been with the Browns as an undrafted free agent in 2021, I believe. And then finally, you've got Bryson Oline, one of Sam's favorites. I know, we're all rooting for Bryson. Obviously, he's an amazing guy and, played in fan-controlled football. And, he's getting some NFL looks too, which is really good to hear. Again, that was a name I think that some people were surprised about, but, we're all happy for him and definitely pulling for him to get a shot. So,
man. Bryson, if you're watching, I mean no disrespect when I say this, but I was slightly surprised to see his name on that list too, but pleasantly surprised, obviously. I just have the highest opinion of him. He's a good dude. I think that he deserves everything that's coming his way. He's a hard worker. He's electric when he gets the ball in his hands, so I'm super excited to hear that NFL teams saw that, despite the fact that he didn't necessarily get featured in that offense or on special teams quite as much as I was expecting. But got 4 other players that have been reported so far. Most of these are coming from Aaron Wilson. We've got Jack Cohn, the quarterback from San Antonio, was invited to minicamp with the Seattle Seahawks. Jaquez Patrick from San Antonio as well, invited to rookie minicamp here in Denver. Freedom I'm going to butcher his last name, Akin Maluadon, from St. Louis, invited to Miami's minicamp as well, along with Jack Snyder that you just spoke about. And then Barry Wesley from Seattle was invited to Atlanta's minicamp. Wow, butchered all one of those names. Anybody off this list really shock you? I mean, I know personally I was surprised that the first quarterback was Jack Cohn. Anyone in particular, Evan?
Not really. I mean, again, this is just sort of the first set of names. There's going to be a lot more, in terms of order. Like, I mean, you could say it was surprising that Jack Cohn was the first quarterback to, get a shot. But does that mean he has the best odds of making the team? No. I mean, we've talked about this before. A rookie minicamp invite is considered a lesser deal than signing like an actual contract. And that's not a guarantee for all those guys. Again, the fact that people are getting opportunities is great. I'm not here to, say one thing is bad or one thing is good. I mean, it's all the fact that these guys are getting around the NFL is extremely pleasing to see. But yeah, I mean, so far, again, the names in Houston didn't surprise me a ton. Because Jack Snyder, he went a bit under the radar. At guard, he played a lot of the snaps though, and CJ Brewer again. I think he was he might have been one of the only guys on the team in Houston. Again, going off the top of my head here, but might have been one of the only guys on the team in Houston who played in an NFL game in 2022. And I don't know how many players can say that really in the entirety of the XFL. So he's a special guy too. Shout out to CJ, cool dude. I think that's about it on my part.
That's fair. Krish, were you surprised by any of these names?
Not really, to be honest. I guess Jack Cohn, but I guess the fact that he's young and sorry about that. The fact that he's young and just I could see a team wanting to give him a shot. Also, the Seahawks quarterback room, like you said, they only have 2 quarterbacks right now, so him getting invited, he has a really good shot at making the roster. He really, really does. And that really brings me to an interesting point. So the Seahawks on their practice squad, I believe, have a guy named Anthony Gordon. And Anthony Gordon played at Washington State. He was the quarterback. He was incredible to watch. He was actually the leading, I believe, pass yard leader for college football that year. So I'm hoping that Jack Cohn goes to Seattle and Anthony Gordon goes to the XFL. That's what I want to see. That would be really, really exciting to watch. But no, I'm really happy for Bryce. He really deserves it, coming from the CIF to where he's at now, doing his thing. And for all these guys, my main message is seize the opportunity. I was on the phone with, a player today, and I just told him, I'm like, man, seize the opportunity, enjoy every moment that you have. And don't, the fact that you're here is incredible. Now take it. You've been begging for the chance, so now you finally have it. And so just go and show them what, they can possibly get. So I think that's the biggest thing. It's great. It's what the league is supposed to be for.
100%.
And I will say this, I know how Dwayne said, some of these players are going to move on to the XFL and we'll be rooting for them. But some of these players are going to want to stay and build what they have in their home cities. I'm like, yeah, that's true, but no guy in the XFL wants to stay in the XFL unless you're AJ McCarron. Every guy wants to move up to the next level. They all do. So any opportunity to move up is the eventual goal.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. I think that the vast majority of these guys do want to end up in the NFL. That is the ultimate goal. But at the same time, I would say that a lot of these guys might never go further than the XFL and are okay with that. That's the thing that I think that he was trying to get across. At some point you're going to, I feel, see a level of players kind of shake out of the pack in terms of players that are available. And they're going to end up being guys that are kind of stalwarts in the XFL and the USFL level of football. Guys like, a Case Cookus who has, kind of garnered that fan recognition, a Jamar Smith, stuff like that. Guys that maybe got NFL looks, but are back in these leagues year over year, and then build that kind of stardom for the league. I think it's big for the league, and then I think it's big for the players as well in building a personal brand as they go forward in their personal lives after football. But we're going to do one more segment real quick before we get out of here, and that is the predictions. So I wanted to get you guys' predictions for the XFL championship game first. So we'll go to Evan first. Do you have a prediction on the team who wins? And if you care to give one, a score as well.
Yeah, I've never really been good with scores, so I'll probably just stick with the team. I'm always way off on those scores, man. But, again, I said it before when we were talking about, the DC Seattle game. I think DC takes this one. I'd give Arlington a fighting chance. I'm not going to say they're going to get blown out, but at the same time, sometimes teams rise quickly and then fall quickly. And I'm not saying that will happen to the Renegades, but, they definitely have a higher chance of doing that than DC does, because at this point, I've looked at DC and I said, oh, well, maybe they could, have something happen this time, or, maybe something doesn't go the way. But every time I say that, it does. Every time they say that, they prove me wrong and they just seem to get better. So I'd have to take the Defenders there.
Completely fair. Chris, are you also taking DC, or are you gonna roll with Arlington?
No, I would have to be higher than the sky to pick the Renegades to win this game. No, I'm all DC. I'm loving the team. I'm so excited for my boy Santos. He gets 2 championships in 3 years. I mean, he must be feeling like $1 million. So I'm really happy for this team. You know, they came together, but that's what, you know, when you go out and you get the right coaches, when you get the right players, like, this is what happens. You know, when you invest, that's what you get. So great. You know, I'm my prediction. If I had to do a score prediction, I say like 32-18 DC.
That's fair. That's right on par with what Arlington has scored all year long in terms of offensive output. So, and DC's had multiple games with 30 points or more. But I'm going to go that same direction. DC is the must pick if you're going to bet on this game. I personally am not a bettor, so more power to you if you want to do that. But I personally am going to go with a similar score. I'm going to say 28-16. Because I just think there's going to be a 2-score gap by the time this game wraps up. Moving on to the USFL Week 4 games, we have Houston versus Philadelphia. Evan, what's your prediction on that one?
You know, that's honestly a tough one. You know, Houston is, I mean, I'm not going to say they're perfect either, but, you know, again, Philadelphia is kind of on a bit of a downturn, whereas maybe Houston, you know, they won that last second game against Memphis the other day. So I don't know, man. I mean, it's kind of a toss up there. I'd maybe give the advantage to Philly because I think they're hungry to bounce back. And I personally think that they maybe have a bit more of a talented roster. So I'll ride with them, but that one really could go either way.
That's definitely fair. I'm quite torn myself. Chris, what are your thoughts on this one?
I mean, if Philly plays like the way they did this past week, then Houston will easily win. But no, I mean, I think, you know, obviously, if what you said about Case and the shoulder, if they start Ladd, I think Philly will have it. But I think Philly's winning either way. It'll be a close one, 21-18. I love Kenji. You know, I love watching Kenji play, but he is just so inconsistent. You know, he needs to figure out his footwork is like out of a horror movie. It's so bad. So I really want to see him improve on that, and I'm excited. You know, I'm happy. You know, Houston has one real team because you can't count the Gamblers. You know, you have to only count the Roughnecks as Houston's only alternate football league team. So,
all right. I'm gonna pick Philly as well. Might regret it next week, but we'll find out. I'm going to say 24-21. Something tells me Adam Rodriguez is going to put on a show once again because he's really, really trying to get them back to a USFL championship this year. So let's move on to the next game. We got Memphis at Michigan. This should be an interesting game. Michigan seems like the one team that's got a little bit of a home team advantage this season. Evan, what's your prediction on this one?
I think I'm going to give Michigan the advantage here just because, you know, they're going to play at home again and they've got a good atmosphere, it seems like, up there in Detroit. They can definitely build on that. You know, it's going to be weird seeing Memphis. Like, if that prediction is accurate, then Memphis will be 0-4, which I find a bit hard to believe given that they, you know, they do have some pieces. I will say they're far from perfect, but they do have something to work with, as a lot of teams do. But, you know, maybe we'll see another you know, Todd Haley moment after the game. You know, who knows with that. But again, I'll give the advantage there to Michigan.
That's fair. Chris, what are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, Michigan's gonna smoke Memphis. You know, Memphis is just not. They don't have the quarterback. I thought Brady White was gonna really take that grip, but you know, he struggled obviously with, you know, just not making the right reads. And then, in my opinion, I mean, Cole Kelly, you know, I know they're excited about him. Like, maybe he gets one full start. I'm not sold yet. I just think their whole operation is not. It's downhill. And I think Michigan's going to come back. You know, I believe this game is in what they call the den. So, you know, they have that home field advantage, which, I mean, look, I wish all the USFL teams played in smaller stadiums, you know, so they could pack it out more. But I also, you know, don't want the fields to be like Vegas, you know, which is equivalent to my local parking lot. So, you know, I wish the best.
Do you have a score prediction for us?
Yeah, my score prediction is like 40-15. I'll give him 15.
I would say that's like out of the realm of possibility, but they just allowed 40 points 2 weeks ago. So hard to argue with that, I guess. In this game, I'm going to pick Michigan as well. I think Michigan's on a roll right now. I think Eric Marty is doing his job quite well. I'm liking what Mike Nolan's doing on the defensive side. Breland Speaks has looked like a monster so far this season with 4 sacks already in 3 games. So yeah, you got to pick Michigan in this game. I'm not going to say they're going to score 40 points. I'm looking at like a 24-14 game, and really, it wouldn't shock me to see that score a lot closer by the end of the game. Moving on to the next game, we got another good game this weekend. We got New Orleans Breakers versus the New Jersey Generals, and the Generals are at home in Canton, Ohio. Evan, what's your pick for this game?
You said Generals and who? Sorry, it cut out.
The Breakers, the New Orleans Breakers.
Oh, that's right. Okay, yeah. I mean, again, I'll give the advantage to the Breakers here. I mean, again, they'd be undefeated at 4-0 if that comes into fruition. But I do think the Generals could give New Orleans a run for their money. I don't think, New Orleans might not be scoring 45 points against the Generals. Let's put it that way. And especially after what the Generals did this week, and going into Michigan, and that was Michigan's first home game. Them going in there and winning in pretty dominant fashion. They won by 15 points, I think it was. So yeah, I'll give the advantage to New Orleans there. Just makes sense given the way they've been playing. But again, both teams, those are kind of 2 teams I think that are on the rise, I guess. So yeah,
that's definitely fair, especially after this weekend. Krish, what's your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think home field will really play in for the Generals. Mike Riley's family will probably be the only people there. So, but I think the Breakers, I mean, General's offense, I mean, they're getting better. But I just think the Breakers, man, like Sage Surratt, that running back is like, they're all just on the same page right now. And I give all the credit to John DeFilippo. I'm loving what John is doing with them, and he's proven like what he did with Nick Foles. He's making MBT look really good too. So the perfect duo. So I got them winning 25-17. Breakers.
That's fair. Man, this is a tough game to pick. I'm going to roll with New Orleans as well, but I really think it's going to be a close game. I'm going to say 21-18. And even that score makes me a little uncomfortable. I think it might be closer than that. I'm not sure the betting odds on this one, but it wouldn't surprise me if it's less than a field goal. Moving on to the next game, though, we've got the last game of the weekend: Birmingham Stallions and the Pittsburgh Maulers. Evan, what is your pick in this game?
Sorry, you cut out.
Birmingham Stallions and Pittsburgh Maulers.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, Pittsburgh. I mean, I think you give the advantage to Birmingham in this one. I know Pittsburgh came out and beat Philly, which was a bit surprising. But, man, I mean, Birmingham is, again, they're kind of one of those teams that's hungry last week to New Orleans, and they kind of want to, I think, avenge that. And, Pittsburgh might come back down to earth a bit in that one, if you know what I mean. I think, that, again, they stunned a lot of people last week in a sense. But, yeah, I see Birmingham taking that by a pretty decent amount. Not sure if that's going to be a close game.
That's fair. Krish, what are your thoughts on this one?
I think Birmingham, they're just going to come out and do what Birmingham does. They might have a new addition at running back this week, so I won't say who it is, but one of my Pirates guys. So I'm hoping that he gets to play this week for them. But no, I think Birmingham has the advantage over Pittsburgh. Till Pittsburgh gets my boy Dom Logan, they're going to continue to struggle on offense. And they're not going to get to where they want to be. So I have to pick Birmingham in this game. I think Magoo's going to have a pretty good game. I say 45-21.
All right. Well, once again, another score that just blows my mind. That's all right. So in this game, I think Birmingham is ultimately going to win the game, but I think the Pittsburgh Maulers are going to keep it a lot closer than a lot of people expect. I'm going to say 24-21 in this game as well, although it's highly unlikely both of them land 24-21. But I just feel like Birmingham really isn't the juggernaut that they were last season. The Maulers, I think, are finally hitting a rhythm, and now that they've kind of, it looks like, roll with Troy Williams, I have a little bit more faith in their offense to move the ball, given what he was able to do this past weekend. So I personally am excited to watch this game because I think it's going to be a really good game. Maybe a little bit of a defensive battle at first, but ultimately will open up as the game goes on. But anyway, that is basically the gist of the episode this week. More or less, there isn't a whole lot to talk about with the XFL closing down. Here in the next couple weeks, I expect there to be a flurry of information with XFL signings. And then here shortly, we'll probably get more news of USFL draft picks either signing or getting released. So we'll definitely be keeping track of all that. We'll also be back with That Don't Impress Me Much next week. And the rest of the segments that you can enjoy. Hopefully Mark Hogan will be back with DFS picks of the week for USFL. And yeah, definitely join us next week, and we will give you all information you're looking for when it comes to the XFL and the USFL. Thank you so much, Evan, for joining us. You can follow him on Twitter. What's your handle again?
It's just Evan_Wilsmore. Yeah.
Perfect. So go check him out for all the Houston Roughnecks articles that you would love to see. And definitely follow him to make sure that you keep track of all the Houston Roughnecks players getting NFL interest, because I guarantee he's the one on top of the case. Krish, definitely thank you, as always, for joining us. Once again, you can catch Krish every Thursday night on Eye of the Storm, the Southwest Kansas Storm dedicated podcast that we have here on Shady Sports Network. So have a great night. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next one.